Hey, everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod to talk about Michigan State's upcoming Big Ten opener against the Iowa Hawkeyes in East Lansing. Spartans return home after a very successful trip to Florida, where they notched their third big win of the relatively early non-conference season. Before we begin, a big word of thanks to those who help us expand our coverage of the Spartans. Patreon supporters of the Mateen Cleaves level: Bill Church, Brian O'Donnell, Michael Bosnick, Chad Hickey, Mike Huntoon, and Scott Driscoll. Draymond Green supporters: Adam Walzak, Dan Rankin, Jim L., Paul Marsh, and Greg Bamer. And all the Scott Scala supporters on Patreon and YouTube, as well as Rich Wagenheim, Kenneth Cremett, Roger Bronsink, Al, Michael Emmerich, Joe and BT, and Jim Rainey on Substack. If you want to support the show and get an ad-free audio version of the podcast, just please head on over to our support page at tffinots.com/support to get the links. All right, so now that the Spartans have managed the first challenge of their schedule, one that Tom Izzo described as the schedule from hell, they return to open up the Big Ten season, defend their championship against a tricky, undefeated Iowa squad. It'll be Iowa's head coach, Ben McCollum's first trip to East Lansing. The Hawks are very different from what we've gotten used to over the years under Fran McCaffrey. Instead of a high-tempo offensive approach and defense optional attack, this year's Hawkeyes are more methodical and focused on defense and frustrating opposing offenses. So far, it's working, but MSU on the road will be the first real big test for them in the young year. And, I guess we can go into the specific numbers for Iowa before we get into this thing. So before we talk about Ben McCollum, I guess, but so they have a couple big wins. They beat Xavier by 19 at home. They beat Ole Miss by 5 in the Acrisure Classic a couple days ago. Ben McCollum came from D2 ranks, of course, came from Drake, and as we'll see soon, brought about half of this Drake team with him to Iowa City. And they're pretty good from three. They're 42nd. They're number 10 in shooting twos. They're very good from the free throw line. They're 69th in getting fouls, but
69 percentage, but
for shooting, percentage, yes, right. And number 2 in offensive foul rate. So they draw a lot of fouls.
Yep.
Top 50 defensive rebounding team, and they're just a very good defensive team in general. And they 29th in offense, 24th in defense. So pretty good balanced team.
Let me stop there for a second. I wanted to talk about the defense first, because
the fact they have defense.
They're sixth of all that, but they're sixth in the country in defensive turnover rate. But they're not a full court pressure team at all, right?
Right.
So how are they? You've seen them more than I have. I've seen basically 10 minutes of Iowa so far this year. How are they doing that? And they did it at Drake last year too. I think they were top 10 in turnover rate last year. So it's obviously something McCollum wants to do. How do they do it?
Yeah, it's funny. It's not like they trap. They don't do any sort of. There's nothing gimmicky. I think they play solid defense. There's a lot of hands in the lane. They switch really well, and maybe that's just it. They just are able to maintain contact with the opponent really well, and that's how they can get deflections. I mean, I feel like there's nothing particular they do. They cause a lot of turnovers from shot clocks. I mean, they must do that 2 or 3 times a game as well. So that's part of it. I think by nature of their offense and their tempo being so slow, they're 5th slowest in the country. I think they lull you into teams that are normally, used to playing faster. I think they get sucked into sort of a slow game as well. And I think that's part of it there's nothing in particular. It's not like they're guarding right at the half court line and, dogging people or doing like a 1-3-1 trap or anything like that. It's sound defense. And I think it's just frustrating for teams. They start trying to overpass or trying to, long skip passes and things like that. So I think that's kind of what it is. It's just a frustrating defense to play.
That's really remarkable then, because normally when you see teams at that level of turnover creation, they're selling out to some extent to generate that,
right?
Like you said, they're half court trapping or full court pressure, something that will then in turn leave them exposed if you handle it. But if you're generating that many turnovers while still playing with solid defensive principles, that's really the best of both worlds. So that to me, when I looked at their profile, that was the thing that leaped out immediately, because I was pretty sure that, selling out and taking risks was not really something McCollum typically did defensively, but that turnover rate is so high that it made me wonder about that. The other things defensively, I think the other thing that sticks out is their top 50 defensive rebounding team.
Right.
So another trait that tends to go along with teams that play a pretty disciplined brand of basketball usually is that, teams that want to make you use a lot of the shot clock, don't engage in much gambling, etc. Usually they tend to also be pretty good defensive rebounding teams, and Iowa seems to be that as well. So defensively, yeah, we're in another universe from where we've been for the last 15 years when we're talking about Iowa basketball. So don't expect to see any similarities in that regard, or really any regard, with the way you're used to seeing Iowa play, over the last decade and a half. The one thing I would say about them defensively, they're middle of the pack nationally in stopping teams from having success shooting threes and twos. So if you are able to survive the possession without giving it away, you're having decent success rate shooting the ball against them, which is not a surprise to me, because to be better than that, you typically would have to have better athleticism, better length, some combination of those things. And they're not really a particularly large team. They're also not a particularly athletic team, in my opinion. Right. So I think McCollum seems to be getting as much out of this team as he can, but there are still some things that you can do against them. They're a good defensive team. They're not one that's been on Michigan State's level yet. Michigan State is fifth defensively overall entering this game. Iowa's 20. What were they?
24th, I think, is
24th.
That's when he
24th. So really good, but there's a difference. I don't think Iowa. The difference would be Iowa is going to, obviously they're gonna hope to end your possessions with a turnover. If you miss a shot, they're going to generally end the possession with an offensive rebound, but they're not necessarily going to take away any good shot you could get. Michigan State can do that last part as well. They can just take any good shot away. Offensively, you mentioned it, very methodical. One of the 5 slowest paced teams in America. So we're getting into, Bo Ryan, Wisconsin territory in terms of pace. But really good shooting, as you mentioned. And the thing that jumped out at me most on the offensive profile was the number 2 in the country in offensive foul rate. So they are drawing a lot of fouls. When you've seen them, are you seeing anything in particular that's leading to that? Are the guards getting good penetration and forcing fouls that way? Is it the bigs, or is it just kind of overall they've been able to generate a lot of contact? What have you seen?
Yeah, when it comes to drawing fouls, I think part of their offense is, so obviously they're methodical. They're getting a good shot, which I think helps their shooting percentage. Certainly, they'll pass a ton. And I don't feel like it. And Bennett Stirtz is one directing traffic. He's the one drawing a lot of fouls. He will force the issue because you have to respect his outside shot so he can drive. Mm-hmm. And if you help too much on his drive, he'll kick it and usually leave some out of position. And I think that's where they're drawing a lot of their fouls, either with their bigs, or if you don't and you have Stirtz go by, then it's sort of like he causes problems. He's very good at drawing contact and shooting and playing through it. So I think it's just, like his mature sort of offense as far as he goes as his attack. And it all begins and ends with Bennett Stirtz. I mean, the offense is very much him. I'm actually a little surprised by the tempo. I know we weren't sure what Iowa would be this year. At Drake, certainly they were very, very slow, but we thought with maybe, different players, maybe. And Ben McCollum wasn't that slow when he was in D2.
Right.
And so there was no reason to think that sort of style of play would carry over. But I think just the nature of Bennett Stirtz and the recognition that Bennett Stirtz has to pretty much play the entire game, I think limits how fast you can play. I mean, I think, the guy's a great athlete or whatever, but no one can play a breakneck pace for 40 minutes every game and hang in there. And he basically plays every minute. I think he hasn't this year. They rested him a couple games they played. The other thing I'd say about the statistics that might be a little misleading. Yes, Iowa's played Xavier. They weren't very good. I think that was what Richard Pitino's team.
It's a bad iteration of Xavier right now. Yes.
Yeah, they're not very good. They played Mississippi. Mississippi seems okay, but
the
other teams they played are just terrible.
We know is a good coach. So
yeah. But the other teams they've played have been really bad. I mean, really, the very definition of tomato can, as you put it.
Yeah.
And so I think their defensive numbers, like when I watched them play defense against, I don't remember who it was, like Western Illinois or something like that. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, it's like probably 20-2 at the start of the game, just because the other team couldn't even get going in offense. They kept getting throwing the ball away and stuff. But once it went up against Mississippi, it wasn't like that. I'd have to look at the numbers, but I don't think they had a massive turnover. It wasn't an obscene amount of turnovers that Mississippi was committing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You can look it up, but it didn't strike me as like they were definitely a very good defense, but it wasn't suffocating like it was for the lower competition. And I feel like that's what it was at Drake too. Like when they play the worst teams, they'd really just clamp them down and just, destroy them. But then it gets better competition. They were still good, but solid, but they weren't like impossible to score on.
Yeah. Mississippi had 13 turnovers.
Yeah. So
that's okay. But, I guess I had lost track. Mississippi has our old friend AJ Storr.
Yes, AJ Storr's there. Yep. He is. Yeah, I saw him too. Like,
had a good game at 22.
He scored a lot the second half. Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. But okay, so that's worth noting, and I think we should talk about that for a second. Yes, Iowa's 7-0. Yes, They have a couple of high major wins, but this game represents there's risks both ways. You've had a lot of people all of a sudden talking about Michigan State dealing with this as a trap game. I'm not worried about that.
Me either. Yeah.
Because it's the Big Ten and this is Tom Izzo. So, and he's got 4 guys who have seen a lot of these kind of games too.
I was going to say, there's a lot of maturity on this team.
Yes.
I mean,
I'd be very surprised if Michigan State came out flat. But, this game being between North Carolina and Duke, and now, Michigan State having you're finally starting to see after the North Carolina game, the national college basketball media accepting that Michigan State right now, at least, looks like an elite team.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any question they're going to be in the top 10 of essentially every ranking there is next week. And so that, I get it, the concern, but I am pretty confident in this team's ability to handle that. On the other side, though, I think it's a little more real in that this is a big step up in class for Iowa.
Yeah.
They played Mississippi, solid SEC team. I don't know if they're going to be as good as they were last year. It doesn't seem likely to me that they will be, but that was on a neutral court. This is the Breslin Center, and this is a top 10 Michigan State. That is a big deal. And Ben McCollum has never – who did Drake lose to in the tournament last year? Do you remember?
Oh,
who
let's see. I think they beat Missouri in the first round, and I think the second round was a Texas team. Was it Texas Tech or Texas?
Okay, so
not
this. They didn't get eliminated by a Duke, a Carolina, a Kansas, somebody like that.
No story.
Ben McCollum has never seen this. For as great a coach as he's been at every level he's been at thus far, he's never seen this. His players, you mentioned, many of them came from Drake. Some of those guys were with him in D2. Some of them came to Drake from other places. But there's nobody on the Iowa roster that's ever played anything close to this. Not close.
Yep.
That's not even getting into the specifics, which we'll talk about later, about what the problems Michigan State presents with their combination of physicality and athleticism. Very rare. You don't see it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think, is something Iowa is really going to have to deal with it. And if they deal with it successfully, full credit.
Yeah.
Because that would be a hell of an accomplishment for them. But this is new. It's new territory for everybody on that Iowa sideline. And so that to me is from their perspectives. I'm trying to put myself in their position. That's the biggest thing. It's like, okay, this is new territory for us collectively. How do we handle it?
Yeah. I think that'll be the biggest challenge for Iowa, frankly, is the setting. I do think with Bennett Stirtz, he's a very calming influence. And so if they could weather that sort of storm and find a way through it, it'd be through him. And so that'll be the question. I mean, it's going to be come down. We'll talk about the keys, of course, but that will be the key to the game for them, is really how Bennett Stirtz performs. He struggled a lot in I think it was the third game of the Acrisure, because I think that was also 3 games in 3 days, and he did not shoot well against Grand Canyon in the championship game, which they won against Grand Canyon, because Grand Canyon didn't shoot well either. Both teams looked, I think, tired. But you definitely saw it with him. 1 for 6 from 3. That's not his usual shooting performance. So he's had at least time to rest, and so we'll see. He seems unflappable to me, but I guess that'll be the real question. And it's one that no one on that team. There's only one player who was a former Iowa player. So I don't think anybody's ever been to East Lansing. I don't think so, anyway.
Yeah, it really strikes me but look, I mean, yes, it's the first time, but this is what life is going to be.
Right.
For Iowa, right? So you might as well get started with it. I don't think it's Ben McCollum can't handle this. I don't think it's I think he can handle it just fine, and I think he will. They've been thus far, they've pretty much gone exactly to script in terms of what I expected overall from this team. They've been good.
Yeah.
And so they're going to figure that stuff out. I'm only suggesting it as a factor because it is literally the first time, and they're not getting to ease into this stuff. They're not getting, Northwestern and Evanston when school's out of session.
Right.
They're not getting Penn State in a Bryce Jordan morgue.
Yeah.
They're getting this. This is the baptism under fire.
And they're not even getting a home game first, right?
They're not getting a home game, right? Make it easier still.
Yeah.
But in terms of road environments, I mean, you'd have Mackey, and then you got this.
Yeah.
So it's right there, the toughest test, and you're getting it for a Michigan State team that is playing at such a high level for this time of year. That's all of it is in there. So yeah, it's not a knock on Ben McCollum, like, I don't know if he can handle this Big Ten stuff. I think he's going to handle that just fine. It's just that this is the first one for him, the first one for his players, and I think that presents some challenges that are a little stiffer than what they might otherwise have in a Big Ten opener.
Yeah, Iowa had the unfortunate they're unfortunate in that they get to draw Purdue twice this season, so they get to play at Mackey and at home against Purdue. So it's one of their double plays. All right, so let's talk about some gutters here, Rod. So if you need your gutters fixed up, repaired, cleaned out, whatever it might be, I know it's winter, but it's time to get that taken care of before it gets really bad, because we have not yet had the significant snowfall or those problems. Contact the Brothers Adjust Your Gutters right now. You can go to our support page at tffinots.com/support. There you can find a link to contact either Greg or Kurt, depending on whether you're on the east side or the west side of the state. Have them get up on the gutter or the ladders to take care of your gutters. They will take care of those things so you don't have those water problems, which is a real problem in the winter. You don't want that issue causing some cracks and problems with your foundation. So have them take care of things right now. You get 10% off mentioning Final Four when you get your estimate. And they sponsor, of course, the player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter, and we'll go over the opposing lineup. This is not going to be this is not going to be real dramatic in who it's going to be, but we'll begin with Bennett Stirtz. So 6'4" senior. He began his career with Ben McCollum at D2 Northwest Missouri State. He was Missouri Valley Player of the Year last year when he followed Ben McCollum to Drake. And he's followed him one more time to Iowa City, Iowa, to be the senior point guard for the Hawkeyes. He's averaging 18.6 points a game, shooting 50, 46, and 84, averaging 5.5 assists a game to just 1.5 turnovers, leads the team in steals with almost 2 a game, and just kind of does everything. He dictates the pace. Obviously, he's the point guard. He has the ball in his hands probably 40% of the time when they're on offense.
Yeah. We knew, I mean, this guy was Missouri Valley Player of the Year last season. So if you're that, the odds are pretty good you're going to be a very good Big Ten level point guard as well. And he's been that. He's been everything they expected him to be. He shot the ball extremely well, done generally a good job running their offense. He's a defensive factor for them. At 6'4", he's got good size positionally, so that creates some issues. I don't know if athletically he's at the top tier, but good enough. And with the intelligence he plays with it works. So as much as any team in this league, I think Iowa turns on him. You know, you could say the same for Michigan State, I guess, but the difference is Michigan State has better players elsewhere,
right,
than Iowa has. Purdue, Braden Smith, obviously sensational player. They got All-Americans. You know, Trey Coffin-Wren is an All-American around him. Iowa doesn't have that. So it's really down to this guy. He's got to play well for Iowa to have a chance to steal this one. And I think that's going to be the case for them throughout Big Ten play. If they get Bennett Stirtz having an off day, it's probably going to be hard for that team to win. But I also don't think he's going to have many off days.
I think that's a good way to sum it up. Yeah, I would say with Iowa, if they were to lose him, I have a hard time seeing them beat anybody, even in Rutgers. They
don't have anybody else at the position, really.
I mean, I suppose they have a backup point guard. I have no idea who that would be. I mean, they don't even have really a secondary ball handler when I really watch games, because pretty much just Stirtz. So
well, I want to check something on that before we move on. Let me pull this up here since I've got Iowa and Ken Palm noted. I want to see Stirtz. So he's percentage of minutes played. He is the number 5 player in the country.
And, yes,
I'm looking to see.
I feel like a game played only. I'm thinking Braden Smith played 23 minutes in the last game for Purdue.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I bet he's not played less than 38 minutes a game, even in the blowouts.
I'm not seeing it here. I thought they might have a usage rate number here, and they don't, but I've got to believe he's up near that's what I was looking for. As you say, like how ball dominant he is out of necessity, he's got to be near the top of the charts nationally there as well.
Yeah. I mean, he dictates the pace of the offense. He dictates how the offense runs every play. He is truly everything. He is, as much as we can say Jeremy Fears runs the offense for Michigan State, it's nothing like what it is for Bennett Stirtz. I mean, you'll watch this. If you've not watched him play before, you'll be in for it. It won't surprise you. I guess you should now be prepared for watching a guy totally dominant on the offensive end. But not a guy who can look for his own and get it if he needs to, but not one who has to. Like, he doesn't. You never get the impression that he's maybe selfish. I suppose it's not like he feels like he has to get his. He will just do whatever it takes to score, and if it's him, he's fine with it. You know, he's comfortable with whatever it is. So,
which is not always the case with a guy scoring almost 19 a game.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think he'd be fine scoring 10 with 5 more assists or something a game. I don't think he really cares. That's my impression. And we'll talk about it later when we get to the keys. So going to Cale Combs, 6'4" junior, and this will not be a surprise, came from Drake, followed McCollum. He began his career at Wyoming. He's averaging 6 points a game on 45, 25, and 93 shooting, and 3 assists per game to just 1 turnover. So quite a change just from Stirtz to Combs.
And he's been starting recently. They originally were starting Isaiah Howard, I believe.
Yes.
But now they've moved to Combs. Have you detected anything in watching them, the difference, why he might have made that move? I'm not sure.
I couldn't tell you. I mean, they look on paper, they look pretty similar. I think Howard is a sophomore. He's maybe a little less mature.
Yeah.
Maybe it just helps having him come off the bench. I'll honestly tell you that neither of them are shooting great from outside. And Howard was especially the end of last season, he started to shoot really well from outside, but he's struggled a little bit out of the gates.
Didn't he have a big Missouri Valley tournament or something?
I think actually the championship game, I think that was the game that he had a really big game.
Yeah.
Then we have Tavian Banks. Okay, so I have a Tavian Banks story.
All right.
So as most of you know, or maybe you don't know, I went to medical school at Iowa, and I'm not someone who plays soccer. I never played soccer in my life outside of just like random times, just kicking the ball around or something at school. But a bunch of my friends in med school said, "Hey, let's enter for IM soccer, indoor soccer." So we played at the football practice facility for Iowa. And I was like, all right, well, I don't play soccer, so I'm like, I'll just be goalie, whatever. Well, we weren't great athletes, not surprisingly. But also we had a game, we're playing the Iowa varsity football team. And you might recall Tavian Banks, who was a running back for Iowa at the time. He ended up going to the NFL. He was also an all-state soccer player in Iowa before. So needless to say, we lost that game, I don't know, 20-1 maybe or something like that. It was ridiculous, but I'm in goal. And so Tavian Banks is like, blasting goal. I actually saved one of his goals. I blocked a shot, but he broke my wrist. So I had a fractured the first half.
On the shot you saved?
Yep. Because I deflected my left hand, bent my hand back or whatever. And of course in indoor soccer, they're like 5 feet away. I mean, it's like really close. It's a softer ball, but the guy's kind of strong. That's right.
Yeah.
So I block a shot. At halftime, I go to the trainer. I'm like, my wrist really hurts. And the trainer's like, moves around. He's like, I think you just sprained. It should be okay. You can play if you want, whatever. I'm like, well, I guess I'll go out and play. So I proceeded to play the rest of the game in goal with basically one hand and two legs. I couldn't use my left hand for anything. They scored a bunch more goals on me, obviously. I felt like I did pretty well. I had a lot of saves with just my legs. And, but anyway, it wasn't until I realized I couldn't sleep that night that I actually had a problem. And so the next day I went and they took an x-ray and of course it was broken. So that's my only broken bone I've ever had in my life is when Tavian Banks from Iowa broke it. Now this Tavian Banks, and they might even mention the game, totally different Iowa player. Obviously he's not the football player and spelled a little differently. He's a 6'7", 215-pound senior, came over from Drake as well, averaging 9.3 points a game, 4.1 rebounds a game, shooting 58, 50 and 68. I don't think he's shot many threes. I don't think.
No, it's a low number.
Yeah, it's like maybe 2 of 4, so 1 of 2 or something.
Yeah.
He's a very good active player, and so he's one who, compared to obviously Cone Carr at the 3, it's no question who's better, but he's a very good player.
Yeah, and a key guy for that reason, I think.
Yeah.
He gives, not every team, especially the modern era, we really do see a lot of teams go with what in essence are 3 guards, well, much as Michigan State did last year, for example. Because Michigan State has Cohen Carr, that creates a real problem for you defensively if you're going that way. Iowa having a guy like Banks at least gives them a good physical matchup for Cohen.
Yeah.
No, he's not going to jump the way Cohen does, but physically he's built to be a respectable matchup against him from a physical perspective. So that's a positive for Iowa to have a guy like Banks.
Yeah, he plays hard. Next is Cooper Koch, 6'9", 220-pound redshirt freshman. He's the only guy returning actually from Iowa. He didn't play last year as obviously since he's redshirted. Averages 8.9 points a game, 4.4 rebounds a game, shooting 62, 47, 85. He actually is the son of Jarek Koch, who was on Iowa's team back when I was there. And actually, strangely enough, I was a tutor for I'm almost certain in this case, tutor for his mom, who was on the dance team. So she was, and I was tutoring for the athletic department of Iowa. Anyway.
He strikes me as a guy who is going to be a very important player for that program over the next several years. He's off to a good start. Didn't play last year, as we said. I think he was hurt, right? That wasn't a just take a red shirt to get stronger.
I think he was hurt, but I can't recall.
Yeah. That's my recollection, is that he was actually hurt. But he's playing very well. I was looking at the stats since we've been starting the episode against Ole Miss, which is, the closest test to what this is going to be like. He had 10 rebounds, 4 of them offensive. Now, he hasn't rebounded like that consistently, but that's a good sign that in a game against a high major opponent with presumably good physicality, good athleticism, he was able to really do the job on the glass. And he's shooting exceptionally well from range. Not heavy duty volume, but he's a stretch threat. That's a guy that Michigan State's going to have to be very conscious of, I think, on the arc, because he can hit threes. He's dangerous there. So nice young player. I would imagine they're going to hope he continues to get stronger and, develop more and more consistency. But he's already showing signs of being a higher quality Big Ten four-man.
Yep. No, I totally agree with that assessment. Yeah, he's a good player. And I think you'll notice this about just about all the Drake players. Well, pretty much all the Iowa players, is that they do play really hard. And so you're not going to see them take many plays off, which actually epitomizes the next player, Cam Menyawu, 6'9", 250-pound junior. He also followed, gone from Wyoming to Drake and now to Iowa. He's averaging 7.6 points a game, 3.7 rebounds a game, shooting 60% from the floor, 74% from the line. And he is just a high energy guy who's going to he's not afraid to mix it up. And that's, I don't think you should expect too much problems with Iowa from a physical standpoint, unwillingness to sort of get into it with Michigan State.
So you're saying you think they will be looking
they'll be
to
comfortable
be very
with that.
competitive.
Yeah, they'll be very competitive in that respect. I'd be surprised if they weren't.
Okay.
And then should I go into reserves? Alvaro Fulgaris, 6'10", 230-pound junior, transfer from Robert Morris. He was a Horizon Player of the Game. He played the year last season. He's averaging 10 points a game, 4.7 rebounds a game, plays about 20 minutes, so starters minutes, shooting 56, 48, and 68. And he's actually he's a player I really like a lot. I mean, watching him play, there's a good reason he was Player of the Year last year in the Horizon League. He's good.
I'm a little bit surprised that he's not starting, but that's got to be, you mentioned 20 minutes a game. That's pretty healthy playing time. He was a high profile, relatively speaking, portal guy last year. Iowa was not the only, they didn't just find him under a rock. He was a guy who had a lot of attention and opted to go with Iowa. So he clearly made a decision that wasn't entirely or mostly NIL based, because I'm going to guess he had better offers out there. But I was a little bit surprised that he's not starting. But then I look at it. I mean, you've seen him more than I have. He's got good size, but he's not struck me as an ultra physical player. More of a finesse guy, right? I
think that's totally right. He definitely he's got that European sort of game to him. And I think, I don't know, I didn't watch any interviews with McCollum. My guess is he likes to establish that physical nature on the defensive end.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Brings him in later after sort of that's been sort of, they mix it up a little bit. And so that he's a good player to come off the bench, obviously, because he brings a little bit more offense. So I think that's probably part of the strategy there. And he's more familiar with Cam Menyawu from last season. So, maybe that's just why he feels better having him.
Because I think there's a good case to be made that this kid is actually their second best player.
I think so too.
Starting.
I do think so. Yeah. Yes. And then we have Isaiah Howard, who's a 6'5" sophomore wing we were talking about before. Transfer from Drake as well. He was sophomore with a lot of athleticism last year at Drake. Had a couple good games. Struggled a little bit, like we were saying, averaging 8.3 points a game on 56, 24, and 67 shooting.
So he'd be the athlete among their wing set. So, maybe another guy that draws some minutes against Cohen Carr. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I would guess so. And Tate Sage is a 6'7" freshman, averaging 5.6 points a game on 46, 25, and 64 shooting.
Yeah, a little bit surprised. I mean, he was not a high profile for their freshman class. part of that, McCollum got started late, obviously,
Right.
but
Yeah.
did not have high profile guys in it. But two of them are playing, and Sage being one of them. What's your perspective on him thus far? It looks like
I'll
he's
be honest,
struggled a little bit
I don't
with the
remember him.
jumper, but okay.
I don't. Yeah. So the next three players, I'm like, none of these guys even don't even register in my mind.
Well, I've got
So,
something to say about the next one. Go ahead.
yeah. Next one is Brendan Hausen, 6'4" transfer from K-State. Started out at Villanova. So he's probably been to the Breslin Center, actually. Was he there when how long ago was that?
Yes, he would have. He would have been. Yes,
Yeah.
you're right. That's
I thought about
good
that.
catch. That's one guy who's been through this.
Yeah. He's averaged 4.4 points a game on 11 minutes a game, shooting 33, 38, and perfect 100 from the line.
I am surprised that Hausen is not playing a bigger role. Now, I have to believe it's for very good reasons. But he had a good. Hausen was a guy that was very highly regarded when Villanova got him. And that was during the tail end of the Jay Wright era. Jay Wright was still the coach there when Hausen signed. And then it just didn't work out there. Transferred to Kansas State, was actually pretty good at Kansas State last season. And I think most people expected Hausen would be a starter for Iowa this year. And instead, it's the Cale Combs, Isaiah Howard combo, which, again, maybe speaks to what you were talking about a second ago in regard to the big men. Familiarity being a bigger deal for McCollum, trusting guys he knows.
Yeah.
Because Hausen's only played 11 minutes. I would not have guessed that coming into the season. I would have assumed he would. In fact, in our season preview, I'll bet, I don't recall for sure, but I'll bet that I talked about him as a probable starter. And look, his strength is as a jump shooter, and he's hitting 38% on threes. So he's been dialed in, lower volume because he's not playing a ton of minutes. But I have to assume it's the other things. That maybe defensively he doesn't have the same trust.
That's my
level.
guess.
Yeah,
that'd be my hunch.
But a nice reserve to have for a guy deep in your rotation. Hausen is a guy who could come into a game and make some winning plays.
Yeah. I feel like McCollum in general philosophically is similar to Izzo, and that defense is super important.
Right.
Like, if you're not defending, you're not on the court.
Right.
Obviously offense, you have to score, but I think you have to defend, you have to rebound, which is part of defense. And then also you have to just be able to be tough and physical and not get rattled. And I think I don't know what part of those he doesn't have, but I think that's my guess is why he's probably not playing more. Finally, we have Trevon Jurek, 6'11", 230-pound freshman, obviously a reserve inside, averaging 5 points a game, 1.2 rebounds a game, plays about 10 minutes, shooting 63, 17, and 75. So clearly he knows who he is.
Yeah, but I do think they believed in time he can be a stretch big. You're not seeing it show up with a 3-point success yet, but the fact that he's taking them at all tells you something. And then 75% at the line. Again, this is all very limited volume. But it's interesting, that he was a guy, I remember discussing him in the preview. A freshman, again, not a highly regarded recruit nationally, but I think he was Iowa's Mr. Basketball, whatever their equivalent is, I think. And obviously his real size and height, at least at this point. And I remember the discussion was, it's interesting. They don't have a lot of size. So will that force this guy into playing? And then is he going to be ready for that? I think we're going to start to find out on Tuesday night in terms of the readiness. They do need somebody because, again, we mentioned the size off their bench beyond him is finesse. And really, they've only got the one true post player because I think Koch, for a good player, that's not a center at this stage, So they really do need this guy to step in and give them, 10 quality minutes a game. I think you would say he's probably passed the test overall for his role thus far. But now it gets serious. Now it's Carson Cooper, Jackson Kohler, Trey Kaufman-Renn, Mara, Yaks. All these guys.
I can't wait to do the Michigan
I'm gonna
preview.
say that all year long, by the way. Yes. On and on and on as you go through the Big Ten. And so that's where the rubber's going to meet the road on this is this kid truly ready from a physical point of view to handle it? And my guess is it will be like it ends up for a lot of young players. Some nights he's going to hang in there and do some good stuff. And other nights you're going to look at it and say, that's a guy that needs a few months and 10, 15 more pounds.
Yeah. Well, and to your point too, is getting to Big Ten season with the size, and you're no longer playing the smaller teams that they've been playing in the non-conference. His usage might go up from 10 minutes. I mean, that may be more reflection of, who they've been playing, and then he may just be forcing more action here. So we'll see, I guess. So that brings us to the player that Michigan State is keeping the gutter. My wife has a suggestion. If you want to hear her suggestion, who Michigan State should keep in the gutter? Yeah, it's Bennett Stirtz.
Yeah,
Bennett Stirtz. Do you agree?
I wrestled with it, but yes, I think she's right.
She also has a suggestion for the Duke game next, but go ahead.
This is the most obvious call in the entirety of the Big Ten. I mean, even like the preseason player of the year, Braden Smith, you would not be crazy. There will be nights where he will not be Purdue's best player. There will be nights where you look at it and say Trey Kaufman-Renn was the guy who won them that game, or even Fletcher Lawyer might have an occasional game like that. This team, there is no debate. It's going to be this guy every time out. He means that much to them.
And so that brings us to Who Cleans the Glass Best, brought to you by the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. Friends, there's still time to have your windows taken care of if you're in the greater Grand Rapids area. Contact Troy and his team. They'll come out, take care of your windows, whether it's your home, your business, you got a couple of apartments you're landlord of. Have them come out. They'll take care of those things, interior, exterior, whatever you need done. They'll come out. They also can power wash the house as well, even in this really terrible weather or temperature, I should say. I'll look on the ladder so you don't have to. 15% off. You mentioned Final Four. Just head on over to your support page at tffinots.com/support to get the necessary links. All right. So I tied it up with the last game, which I do not have reflected on the slide. So it's 3-3 right now. And you get to pick first.
Jackson Kohler.
Kohler it is. And I'm just going to go with, of course, with the standard Cooper. And I'm going to go with, I'm going to do what you did last game. I'm going to go with Ward. I think he's going to get a little more time here. So I'm going to say Cooper and Ward.
Okay. And then I will follow up with Cohen Carr. Which seems to be kind of the pattern we're settling into at the moment. But I think the key is obviously going to be, there's a couple of things that strike me. One is you're talking about an Iowa team that's drawn a ton of fouls.
Yep.
So who's able to stay on the floor and who's not would be a factor. And then, of course, the other thing is what Cohen Carr do you get in terms of the rebounding numbers? Because as we know, there's been some inconsistency. We've had nights where he's, able to get 7 boards and then others where he's got 3 or 4. And Cam Ward, I feel like, is settling into being a guy that you can pretty much set a floor of about 4 rebounds, but the ceiling goes way up from there.
Yeah.
If he's on the court, he's grabbing rebounds.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. I think we've definitely got a wide open. It feels that way to me. Like every game, it's not a given. Getting Kohler. If you get Kohler on the right night, like you in the last game, well, that's it. He won it for you by himself. But that's not happening always.
Right.
As good as he's been, that's not happening always. So
yeah. Well, sometimes he's just battling his own players, right, for his own teammates. I do think with the foul issues, we've seen Jackson get into foul trouble a lot less than Cooper. So, like, if you figure those two, Cooper seems a little bit more prone to getting caught. I think just because he's drawing a tougher.
He's asked to do a lot more.
Yeah, he has to do more pick and rolls, and so he gets caught sometimes a little bit.
And that's look, that's the challenge here. It's a good point you make. He's a guy who's probably going to have to deal with some of Stirtz. on switches,
Right.
and so how well he hangs in there without getting baited into fouls is going to be big.
Yeah, and Stirtz is very clever, so you have to be very careful with him, obviously. That brings us to the 5 keys of the game, brought to you by Nudge Printing, and congratulations to Mac Weber, who won the free drawing last month for the hoodie of the Tom frickin' Izzo. It is Black Friday still, so you can still probably get some good deals at Nudge Printing or nudgeprinting.com. The new drawing is actually really nice. It's a Gruff Sparty backpack. I think it's a North Face backpack. It's like a retail of like $100.
Wow.
So yeah,
Sounds great.
So I'm sure there's, even just for yourself, this is a great thing to have. So just head on over to nudgeprinting.com/win. You can enter for free. If you entered last month, you can still enter again. New drawing, totally free. Head on over there, nudgeprinting.com/win. You can get not only enter the drawing with a little at the very top of the screen, but you can of course get you can find our logoed apparel. Plus, you can go to Nudge's regular site and get whatever you want. 20% off your purchase just by going TFF. I know TS as a coupon code. So TIFNOTS is the new code for 20% off your purchase at Nudge Printing. And of course, fantastic stuff. Great stuff to get for Christmas for any of the Spartan fans or family in your life. All right. So the first key to the game is rebounding. Obviously, this is very important for Michigan State if they get a big edge here. And Iowa's a good defensive rebounding team, and they're decent offensive rebounding team. I can't remember what their numbers are, but they seem
just outside the top 100.
So they do some work there, but not like spectacular.
Yeah, I was not a disaster in terms of offensive rebounding. I'm sure they'll generate some, but that would be an area you'd expect Michigan State to kind of hold it down. The challenge would be the other way, where it's Michigan State's offensive rebounding, it's Iowa's defensive rebounding. Iowa's a top 50 defensive rebounding team, so that's very solid, right about where North Carolina was. But Michigan State is an elite offensive rebounding team. They're averaging, I think it's right about 41% offensive rebounding rate thus far. And again, whereas Iowa, you can still kind of question some of the numbers based on the schedule. They've played a couple decent teams, but nobody great yet.
Yeah, right.
Michigan State's numbers are earned. I mean,
yeah,
there's been a couple of teams that are pretty bad, but when you're playing Arkansas, Kentucky, North Carolina, I especially think that in this area, in rebounding terms, because those are teams, whatever you want to say about them, they are big. They all have some physicality to them, and they're athletic.
Yep.
So if you're doing the job against them, you're real. And I think we know that. Michigan State as a rebounding team is real. And so this is a big component of the game. Can Michigan State do their normal thing on the offensive glass, meaning generating a lot of second chance opportunities? If you're doing it at a 41% clip, that is elite territory. It's not just good. Iowa's been pretty good on the defensive boards. They're going to have to be better than good in this one. And if they can play Michigan State more or less to a draw here, that's a big positive for Iowa. So I do think it's an area MSU needs to be, at least semi-decisively better.
The second key to the game is ball security. As we talked about at the very beginning of the show here, that Iowa generates a lot of turnovers. They're very frustrating as far as their defense. And so the thing that will get into Michigan State in trouble we've seen in the past is kind of just trying to force things that aren't there, or like a difficult pass into the interior that gets, tipped away or something like that. That'd be I think that, or, obviously shot clock violations.
Yeah. And it's a good time for Michigan State to face this, because, I look at some of these other Big Ten teams. I look at a team like Michigan, for example.
Right.
Which has been as great as Michigan State's been defensively. Michigan's been even a tick better. And, the thing that people get caught up with Michigan is the size, which is true. But what that's allowed them to do is be very aggressive on the perimeter. So, again, ball security matters. Being strong with the ball matters. And I think that it's good to get this Iowa test now, because there are going to be lots of teams in the Big Ten where that's going to be an issue. You're going to have to be strong with the ball. And MSU's been okay in terms of turnovers. Not as, that's an area where they've really made as a program. It's there's been real progress the last couple of years. It's been two of the best seasons in Izzo's entire tenure, as a matter of fact, in terms of turnover rate. Whereas we know traditionally that's something that that we expect to be a high number, right? As it turns out, Michigan State right now is actually a tick better than they ended up last year. Last year they were number 136 in turnover rate. Right now they're number 126. Wow. The year before that, Hogard senior year, they were 53rd. That was the real outlier.
Right.
But honestly, for a Michigan State team to be 126, historically, that's a great number. So Emma, and I think that's been the case for MSU, much as it was last year. The turnovers, when they happen, seem to come in bunches. We don't see a steady problem throughout a game. It's like, 5 in the first 6 minutes, and then no more in the rest of the half, Yeah. And then the second half is, 3 or 4. That's been kind of the pattern. So I think we need to see Michigan State keep on that path. You don't want to give this team easy basket opportunities. You also want to give yourself a chance for offensive success. And if you don't get a shot up, you can't score. Pretty basic, right? But that is the key. Iowa's defense is really where they are overall based on two things: generating a lot of turnovers and successfully rebounding defensively. So if Michigan State can limit how much they're able to do those two things well, then I think you could have a pretty good offensive day, because Iowa's only been okay in terms of limiting opponent shot success.
And I don't feel like they foul excessively either. Is that accurate?
They don't. They I'll give you the exact number, but you're right. That has not been I don't believe that's been a feature of them. Yeah, they're middle of the pack. They're 146 in defensive foul rate. As a comparison point, Michigan State's actually been, and this is worth talking about when we talk about that foul line stuff. Michigan State, the drawing fouls is way down now. They're at 234, which is not surprising given how the last few games have gone. But defensively, Michigan State's 77th. They've been doing an outstanding job. We saw it against Carolina. Carolina came into that game averaging, I think, 28 or 29 free throw attempts per game. They got 17.
Yep.
And Michigan State defended the hell out of them, too. So it's not like, well, yeah, they're not fouling people, but that's because it's Fran ball passive stuff. No, they're guarding, but they're doing it successfully without fouling. So that's going to be interesting, too.
So the third key of the game is a point guard, and obviously we got the matchup between Bennett Stirtz and Jeremy Fears, two of the, best top whatever point guards in the Big Ten. I don't know. There's so many good ones. It's kind of hard. The top 4, I suppose you'd say they're like the 4 really good ones. And
I would say right now, for me, this season, based on what we've seen, I'd put them 2 and 3.
Okay. And Braden Smith is 1, and then Thornton is a 4. Yeah.
Thornton would be 4. Yeah. Which is not the way you would have had it coming into the season, but that's how I would put it right now.
So obviously, Jeremy had a great game last game. He's sort of finding his way as the Izzo on the court sort of point guard that we're sort of the prototypical Izzo point guard. And one of his superpowers is to get under the skin of opposing teams and other point guards.
Yeah.
Ben Stirtz strikes me as the guy who, not like he's a robot, but seems pretty close, like shows zero emotion, seems totally unflappable. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. I mean, a guy's senior who's seen just about everything and every type of person. I can't imagine he's going to be affected too much by Jeremy, but I guess we'll see.
It's really interesting from that perspective, because I think you're absolutely right. From what I've seen of Stirtz, these two guys are polar opposites in terms of how they approach the game. Stirtz is just steady, doesn't get rattled, also isn't fist pumping and doing all that stuff either. Jeremy Fears, as we all know, exactly the opposite. He's an emotional player, and he lets that emotion show. on the court at all times, which may also be a reflection of their head coaches. I mean, you've seen more of McCollum than I have, but my impression of McCollum is not a tremendously demonstrative guy on the sidelines. Is that right?
I would disagree. I think he's
Really?
very
Is he?
demonstrative.
Okay.
Yeah.
I may not have seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there are times when he sits there but you'll see Izzo, who is almost as demonstrative, who just sits dejectedly on the sidelines too when he's just frustrated by the team.
Maybe that's, yeah. Or
McCollum will jump out. He'll fist pump and do all that stuff too. I don't think they're a whole lot different in that respect.
Okay. So then I'll back off that point. What I was going to say was it may be a reflection of the two head coaches, but we'll set that aside. I do think, though, in terms of the on-court style of play with these two guys, they're very different. Both very successful, both giving their teams exactly what they need, doing it a little differently. Fears is obviously more of a playmaker. Not that Stirtz can't do it, but, Jeremy's averaging almost double the amount of assists per game. Now, some of that's just a reflection of the way the two teams play offensively. Michigan State has more possessions. They want to play a little faster.
Right.
But not all that much faster, because we know if it's not there in transition, MSU is pretty patient too in the half court generally, But nevertheless, I think you can say Jeremy is more of a playmaker, Stirtz more of a scorer if you're trying to generalize. They're both the key to their teams in terms of their success. I would say Stirtz has been a very effective defender, as we talked about. He's leading the team in steals, so he's obviously capable of being disruptive. But I think Jeremy Fears at his best is at another level than anybody else in this league at that position defensively. I think he is the best defensive point guard in the Big Ten. That's my belief. And so that's going to be interesting to watch. The thing in that matchup in particular that I am watching, though, we have talked about this a bit lately. For as good a defender as Jeremy Fears is, there are times when if he's guarding an opposing player who's got, say, 3 inches on him, like we see in this matchup,
right,
there's just nothing he can do about a player who's able to use that size to still get his shot off. And Stirtz, obviously, not only is he 6'4", he's a very good shooter. So that is going to be one thing I watch. Is Stirtz able to, with some level of frequency, still score through good defense because he just has a physical advantage? Or is Jeremy's defense able to take him out of what he wants to do just enough that it makes a difference? Going to be a fascinating matchup. One of the better individual matchups I think we see this year. As you said, ton of great point guards in the Big Ten. But this one in particular, I think, is going to be really good.
It's kind of a shame they only get to play once, although I guess maybe they'll meet each other in the Big Ten tournament or something like that.
Right.
So the fourth key to the game is the post. Iowa can get some stuff done here. You think Michigan State would have a little bit of an edge. They don't have much rim protection from Iowa, which would be much different than it was last game with North Carolina.
Yeah, no rim protection at all, which is again to their credit that they've been as good defensively as they've been, but it's also part of the reason why I think they're kind of mediocre against twos. Mm-hmm. They don't have a lot to dissuade you once you're able to, again, survive the possession and actually get a shot off. I think Michigan State has a clear-cut advantage in the post. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Iowa's got some guys who play hard and everything, and the one kid coming off the bench is obviously a talented player. But I think when you look at, certainly at the top 3 guys, Cooper, Kohler, and Ward, and then, we'll see how much Jesse McCulloch plays, clear-cut Michigan State advantage. It has to play out like that. They need, the last game, I think if you were a North Carolina fan, you would have looked at that matchup and said, well, yeah, Michigan State's guys have been playing well, but we've got a clear-cut advantage in the post. And I would have agreed. Mm-hmm. But Michigan State's bigs played it pretty much to a draw.
Yeah.
And that's a big reason why MSU won by 16, because North Carolina did not dominate in the front court. It was a draw. And that left Michigan State's clearly superior backcourt to actually make the difference in that game. Here, it's flipped. I think Michigan State needs to get work done against these guys. And if they're not, if I was able to play it to a draw or close as, that'll be a problem for MSU.
And the fifth and final key to the game is football on the hardwood, which obviously has to deal with physicality for Michigan State, bringing it to Iowa.
It's interesting that you say you're impressed, and I believe it. Iowa plays extremely hard for McCollum, and that you don't have a lot of concern that they're going to be at least willing to mix it up.
This is not like Iowa teams in the past.
Okay, and I buy that. But again, I go back to what I said near the outset of this episode. This is a different level for Iowa. They haven't seen this. In Breslin, too, let's remember. They haven't seen it. So I am wondering, particularly, well, it's really across the board because it's not just younger players like Koch. It's also veterans who just haven't been in an environment like this. They haven't been in a game like this. And one thing you have heard consistently from coaches that Michigan State has faced this year, you heard Mark Pope was almost moved to committing ritual seppuku or something. And you heard it from Hubert Davis. You heard it from the Wilson kid in North Carolina. He talked about how physical Michigan State was. It was clearly an eye-opener for him. I think you can, and I do buy all of that Iowa plays extremely hard. They're not, this is not Fran ball. Well, I will say, in fairness to Fran, his teams did play with some physicality, especially toward the end of his tenure. You know, Luka Garza was a physical player.
For sure, yeah.
But I know what you mean. It didn't show up on the defensive end, for sure. But
yeah,
I just think it's going to be a little bit of an eye-opener for Iowa. I don't think they've seen what Michigan State is going to bring. And on the flip side, if Iowa is able to match that, and or Michigan State for some reason does not come out and play with the kind of physicality we've become accustomed to, that's a problem for the Spartans.
Yeah, I think that's a real risk here. That I don't see it from Michigan State, but I think that would be the risk. If you don't bring it, Iowa is going to, and they could establish things. And you know how these games are. You want to try and establish things, the tone early in the game, right? Like you're going to come in. It's not going to be easy. We're going to make your life difficult for you. And then that gets into the opposing team's head.
Although I will say, Izzo talked about in the North Carolina game, and I think he was right. The first 10 minutes or so, he felt North Carolina was a more physical team. He talked about how they were bumping cutters a lot. So that's what he's talking about there is Michigan State trying to run their offense, and Carolina just, being physical with people, bumping them off the run they're trying to make, bumping them off their desired path of movement. And it took a while for MSU to settle in and deal with that and match Carolina's physicality and then surpass it. Well, they eventually did. But I think you're right. You don't want it to play out that way. You want to be the more physical team right from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the case. And I do think Michigan State should have no trouble handling that. And as we mentioned, Fulgaris comes in. I think he brings less physicality to the game, but he'll bring in sort of the finesse and the scoring that they need. So they should be able to handle it okay. But I guess just kind of wrapping things up. It's McCollum's first time, but he's been a super successful coach, as we've talked about in the previews. Those of you who listen to that, he was 80% winning percentage or something like that in D2.
Insane, yeah.
And it's pretty much carried over into D1. I mean, he's 70+%, and now he's 7-0 this year.
I mean, what's he lost? Like 3 or 4 games total in D1?
In D1,
so far?
probably. I mean, he lost. Yeah, that's probably what he lost. I mean, one was the second round of the NCAA tournament, which again they kind of could have won too. So anyway, this is a team that I think will come in. They'll be expecting to win. He expects to win. He is a guy who will be able to, from an X and O standpoint, will be able to handle it. I just don't think Iowa has the horses to. This is still essentially Drake. This is a Missouri Valley team which is, good talent level, but it is not, should not be what a high major is. And so even when you have really good coaching, if you go up against good coaching, now that sort of neutralizes that effect, right? So I think Michigan State should be able to handle Iowa okay, but it's not going to be easy, and they have to play well, I guess.
He's 38-4 so far in Division One. That's
That's
after
pretty
winning.
good.
That's after winning 79% of his games in D2. So he's been even better thus far, but it's early. I suspect that winning percentage is about to start coming down a little bit. We'll see how much once he gets into Big Ten play. I think you're exactly right. I think this is a game that, look, no two ways about it. Michigan State can't just roll the balls out. Izzo's talked about that a handful of times already this season. And I think he could not be more correct, that we are not a team that can just roll out there and win. Not that kind of team, not that kind of talent. Michigan State's had teams. Tom Izzo's had teams that could do that. This is not one of them. They have to bring it from an energy and effort and focus perspective every game in order for them to win. And against, real opposition, obviously.
Yeah.
And Iowa counts as real opposition for sure. So they're going to have to play well. This is not a game where I think Michigan State can come out and just kind of half-ass it and think that they're going to win. The good news is we've seen zero signs thus far that this team is likely to have much slippage in terms of their focus.
Yep.
And their try hard, their want to levels. It's all there. And I think that's, I think that obviously that's a program trait, all of that, but I think that's also, that's a reflection of who these guys are.
Yes. 100%.
If you look at this team, Jeremy Fears is a guy who had been a star for a long time, but he's wired in such a way that he doesn't play that way ever.
Yeah.
The rest of their team, Cohen Carr was not a national level recruit until fairly late in his high school career. Carson Cooper wasn't one even at the end of his high school career. Jackson Kohler was a guy who, Jackson, I don't want to underplay Jackson. Jackson played for a very high-profile AAU team. He was teammates with Bronny James. I saw Jackson when he was 14, I think, playing. Didn't know he'd be at Michigan State then, but Jackson got, in terms of how he was perceived, that kind of came later in high school for him, where he was seen as, oh, this guy's a legit top 100 player, all of that. Cam Ward, Jordan Scott, those are guys who kind of grew into it. Divine Ugachukwu, not a player who was, lauded for a long time. So there's a lot of these guys that I think, Michigan State's had more purely talented teams in the past, for sure, where there were more guys who were McDonald's All-Americans. There were more guys that had been big deals for longer in terms of how they were perceived. And I think that does play in for these guys. I think not that they're saying, oh, people doubt me, I want to prove them wrong. It's not that. I think it's just they were not, as a group, this is not a team that's filled with guys who have been kind of coddled.
Yeah.
And so they tend to go balls to the wall every time out, because that's what they've had to do to make a name for themselves, to get to the point that a program like Michigan State was willing to recruit them, and that's what I think you see reflected. And that's why I'm not saying there's no chance that Michigan State comes out and gives a subpar effort. We've seen it for a half here and there, even this season. I'm just saying, I think especially in a game where the coaching staff is dialing it in, and I'm certain they are for this game. They know how good Iowa is. I just don't think the odds of Michigan State coming out and not being locked in is very high. They might not execute the way you want, but I don't think it's going to be likely that we come away from this saying, boy, Iowa just kicked their tails.
Yeah.
They were just not there from an effort, energy, toughness perspective. And I think if this Michigan State is there on those levels, it's going to be hard for Iowa.
I mean, it should
because
be.
they're not
home.
used to seeing it. And then at that point, you know, if Michigan State is a tougher team, well, they're also the team with more horsepower.
Yeah.
So, but you got to do all those things. Iowa's certainly good enough that if you don't bring it, you come away with a loss. And you don't want your first loss of the season to come in this game. You don't want it to come in a conference game, you know, all of that stuff. So it's really important that Michigan State get this one done to get conference play off to the right kind of start. Then you get Duke on the weekend. And then you get a few weeks to kind of more or less work on yourselves.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, I think, you know, Izzo was talking about Carson Cooper talking to the team before a game, saying, you know, he'd never been 3-0 before at Michigan State. So I think the seniors, Kohler, appreciate what the start they've had.
Yep.
And I think the thing you worry about them is coming out flat. It is the first game of the Big Ten, which I think helps that, because it could be, you know, if this was, say, Colgate, then I think you could definitely worry about a flat performance coming in with Duke coming up. But it's not, or even maybe Rutgers, like, you know, a team that's in the doldrums in the Big Ten. You're like, we probably could roll the bowl out, or, you know, Minnesota or something like that. But the fact that it's a team that's undefeated, that's coming in, that's, you know, playing well, I think it'd be hard for me to imagine them not coming out and looking good. I also have a hard time with Jeremy Fears now, of this team coming out looking flat very often, especially right now.
You're right.
Just the way he's only a sophomore. I guess he's redshirt, so it's third year. I just have a hard time seeing them not playing with a lot of intensity, or certainly him, and calling people out about it, like in the huddles and things like
100%.
that. Under 16 or under 12, right? So I think that of course, the risk there is if you do come out a little flat, other players, and you may rally, you've given a window, you've opened the window for Iowa to stay competitive and stay in the game.
Yep.
So you'd want it. This is the sort of game you want to try and get out to like a 10-point halftime lead and just sort of just hold that, because with the way the pace Iowa plays, it's going to be hard for them to come back if they are down double digits.
That's a good point. If you can carve out a decent working margin, it puts a lot of pressure on this team, because you're right. It's not natural for them to have to play catch up. And I don't get the sense that they've had to really do that at all this year thus far. They haven't had to erase significant deficits, right?
I don't even think they've been hardly behind this year. I mean, I missed the first half of the Mississippi game, and that was when I turned on, they were up 2. So I suppose it was close to the first half, but then they pretty much led from wire to wire in the second half, despite AJ Storr. But they, so I don't think they've dealt with that. But, you know, on the flip side, Michigan State also has not dealt with a really close, tight margin up towards the end of the game either. And I mean, you hope that doesn't happen this time. Certainly could be next game against Duke as well.
Only Arkansas was really
a
test.
In question, sort of.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I mean, MSU has not had. We haven't seen Michigan State in many late game situations where you're like, okay, somebody's got to go make a play. Who's going to be?
Yeah,
you know. So yeah, I guess that applies both ways. But I'm with you. I think you add up all these elements for Michigan State, and it's not impossible, because it happens to. I saw Mateen Cleaves led teams have kind of half-assed efforts. It does happen, but you like the odds of this team being in the right place.
Yeah. I think if they were like, you know, win the national championship and this is the year 2, and they already started out 7-0, then I could see a let up a little bit more than right now, where at least that's my general impression. So it could be totally wrong, but we'll have to wait and see. I think we'll sign off there. Just a reminder, of course, head over to support page. You can find a way to support our show at tffinots.com/support. You can also get a hold of any of our sponsors there. Don't forget to go to nudgeprinting.com/win, where not only can you enter the drawing for the free backpack, but you also can get linked to the poll for the live show, which will be the MSU player of the game. And then, of course, we'll also have a poll later through if you thought they kept Bennett Stirtz in the gutter. So make sure you join us live after the show, either on X, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram, wherever you like to consume your media. And so until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go Green.